what has convinced you also this time to run for the presidency? So you can tell exactly.
Do you want me to start with the opening remarks, or should I go straight into questions? Which would you prefer?
But in this case, I think that what you were telling before to speak about your manifesto is part of also of this question. Why you decide?
I think it's quite simple. I've been brought up in a family where we were taught service is our duty, and it's important to be able to provide a service, whether you're looking at it from a national perspective, whether it was in the military, whether it's the regional. And as I got involved in sports for now almost 2 decades, this is a natural extension of service. It's what you can do to make a difference. And my late father used to tell us, it's like, if you can make a difference, it is your duty and obligation to try. And so in view of the opportunity, I felt that this is a way that I can serve the Olympic movement. I can serve the Olympic family, and I wanted to be ready to do so. This is what I think really drove me to make to put my name forward as a candidate.
And after you have prepared your manifesto, and there are some point in which during this conversation we want to focus, because exactly as I have asked to the other candidate, one of the big discussion in this period is regarding also the gender equality, and also the problem of the transgender. The big discussion is a big issue. No, what is your opinion on this matter?
Gender equality is important when we're looking at inclusion, when we're looking at the opportunity for women to participate equally alongside the men. I think this is something that is part of Olympic values. It's part of a move away from what was traditional. It was only in 1900 that the first women actually participated. Also happened to be in Paris. And then 124 years later, we have finally reached gender parity, having equal number of women and men competing. But it's not enough that we're looking at it from a perspective of just athletes. We're also trying to push both in terms of the number of officials. Some of the international federations actually have that the requirements. Some of them are still well below what we put as a 30% target, and we're hoping that they will address that in the future. On the issue of trans athletes, I think the IOC was very clear in its position. We think that the IFs are best positioned to be able to determine from a scientific basis whether there are 2 basic principles. One is the issue of safety, and that's the safety for the athlete. We're not asking them to do a procedure that could be risky for them. And number 2, on that issue and the safety, is it has to be safe for all the other participants involved in the sport. The underlying principle, and this is why international federations are better positioned to answer the question, and that is fairness. Is there any significant change or undue advantage given for people who go through a transition versus people who don't? I come from a sport, FIA. I'm a Senate member in the FIA, and there we have drivers. It is gender neutral. We don't have male drivers and female drivers as such. It is just drivers. FEI, equestrian, does the same thing. They are riders. So I think if there is no difference or there's no undue advantage that can be scientifically proven, then I don't see why they should be excluded. I think it were all about the Olympic movement is about inclusion of all elements of society and all peoples. But if there is an unfair advantage, I think it should be treated much the same way as we fought doping because doping gave certain athletes an unfair advantage. And I think we have to be clear. It has to be fair, it has to be a level playing field for everybody involved, and it has to be safe.
Okay. The second other question difficult in this moment is with the war that are still going on and we don't know when they will finish. The problem of the participation of the athlete of the country in war, because we have the problem of the independent athlete without flag and so on. What do you think about this?
I don't know if you can hear the adhan is going off in the back. If you want to, I'll close the window if it's distracting for you.
No, no, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay, all right. Let's be honest. Sports and the Olympic movement can't solve the world's problems. We can't stop wars. We can't interfere because it would be, I think, very dangerous to do so, to get involved in a wartime environment. So wars have happened throughout history. Europe has experienced two very large wars and the impact it's had on it. So what we can do, what sports can do, is in a post-war conflict or even in a pre-war conflict, we can try and bring communities together. We can try and bring sides together to celebrate the joint humanity. We can look at how we can build a better and more integrated and a peaceful society, and that's part of what the Olympics is all about. Sports can also play a role post-conflict, which is, again, to rebuild, and that is rebuild physically, rebuild mentally, rebuild the society that they've had, and most important element of that is rebuild hope. I think the Olympics is all about hope. It's the opportunity that people can have to be able to participate, to dream about participating. We've seen the impact that the Olympic refugee team has had, and the success they've had actually in Paris, where they won their first medal. That's for 120 million people around the world that are refugees. This is a sign of hope. This is a sign that things could be. There is a brighter path. And I think that's what we can do. Will we be able to solve wars? No, that's what the politicians are there for. That's what the United Nations is there for. That's what other international organizations are there. But we can play a role in peace building, and that's, I think, a role that we should be taking on and being realistic. We can't solve all of it, but we can contribute, in particular, to building a more peaceful society.
And this is very important because in this moment we are in a big danger everywhere, unfortunately. Let's go to another thing that came out lately. What do you think about the possible prize money in the Olympics?
Prize money actually, under the Olympic solidarity model, was usually the purview of national Olympic committees. National Olympic committees quite often do. In Jordan, we do the same thing. If people achieve greatness, they will get monetary compensation for it. And for one simple reason, at the end of the day, people get to see their flags being raised. And I think that's why it's a responsibility of NOCs to encourage and support their athletes when they do succeed, because of the national pride that it generates. The question I think that you're asking is, what about prize money for IFs? And that's a very different.
No, but I think prize money, to introduce prize money as IOC, the FIS they can make is a different matter. But IOC can reach this point or is difficult?
I think it's difficult because, again, we believe in equality, we believe in fairness. How do you value a gold medal? In 100 meters race, whether it's swimming or 100 meters or was it running, versus archery or badminton. How do we I mean, there is, I think, an inequality in terms of what people value as Olympic medals. So I think it is a challenge, and I don't agree with that. I think it goes against the principles of Olympic solidarity. And I think the current system, while maybe not perfect, is an effective mechanism. What I have proposed in my manifesto is to look at what other ways that can we provide services, both in the pre-training phase or pre-competition phase, in the competition phase, and post-competition. What can we do that will be of real value to athletes, so that they feel that all the work and everything that they do in order to compete as an Olympic movement is something that is properly valued externally. So I think then we need to be true to our Olympic principles and our Olympic movement. But I think there are opportunities to look slightly outside the traditional box and look at how can we provide real value to athletes. And that doesn't necessarily mean monetary.
Okay. Now, regarding still the athlete, there was lately some discussion regarding the anti-doping, WADA and USADA and other situation, very difficult. What do you think for the future fight against doping and manipulation of results?
We have to continue. I think what we've been able to do with WADA, again, it's learning, it's a process of learning. We had systems in place to try and catch the individual cheats. We didn't have systems in place that looked at, countries that were cheating. We had to, once we understood that, we had to adapt, change some of the rules and regulations so that it accounted for something which we hadn't taken into consideration beforehand. WADA is about making sports clean. It's about the integrity. It's about the integrity of sports. If we want to remain relevant to our fans, they must believe that what the sports that they're seeing is true sports. It's not manipulated sports. And so I think WADA through ITA, we've been doing a continuous evolution of what it originally started off to be. But either we end up having a fair and level playing field for all athletes, or I think people are just not going to trust us at all, whether it's as an institution or trust the games or trust any of the results. That's, I think, the challenge that we have. It's that issue of integrity, building that trust. And I think WADA has a role to play.
Okay, now I would like to open the floor to the question of all my colleagues. I will only introduce the fact, no? So we begin with Belisa.
Thank you. Greetings from Portugal, the magazine, and Johnny. Royal Highness Prince Faisal Al Hussein, what will be the development improved at IOC in terms of health integrated into sports and sustainability if you become president, and what your vision in the role to implement it in relation to issues of artificial intelligence at the Olympic Games? Thank you.
I think if you allow me, I'll start out just talking about AI, artificial intelligence. I think artificial intelligence provides us with a great opportunity. As you said, if you're looking at it in terms of what it can do, how it can score, you're now beginning to see actually during the games almost a 360 view of people, so you can look at from multiple angles, which didn't exist beforehand. And I think that has added a lot of excitement and has made it, I think, very much clearer. AI can be used also on the issue of helping in the judging process, where if they identify that there seems to be abnormalities in the way that judges score, this could be very, very useful. So I think in terms of its presentation, in terms of what it can provide information for, I think there is a great opportunity for it. The challenge with AI is not everybody can afford it. Not everybody has the resources to develop it. So again, if we're looking at a level playing field, the question is how can I make AI universal as much as I can so that everybody benefits? It shouldn't be just for the benefit of the rich countries at the expense of the poor. So can I actually mobilize it and deploy AI in a way that would help NOCs, would help international federations be able to do their jobs better, make their jobs easier? And if you look at it, what they can do, you got to remember that some of the NOCs only have 3 or 4 employees. So if AI can help make their job easier and allows them to be more productive, I think this is the type of thing we would like to see. And I think that is why in the IOC, we're looking at the issue of AI, because I think it does provide an opportunity. The question is, that's the good side. The bad side is we have to, or the tricky side is we have to make it affordable to all. So how can we provide that universality in and across the board? The beginning part of your question, I think, is on sustainability. And that's simple. That is part of the integrity. What we do as the International Olympic Committee in looking at the games is very much a question of how do we build a sustainable world. We know climate change exists. It's not we're seeing it, we're living it on a daily basis. The challenge that we have is how do I make sustainability a key element, both in terms of financial sustainability as well as, and probably more important, the environmental sustainability. This is the only world that we have. This is the only place that we can live on as a globe, as humanity. We need to work harder to be able to protect it. So I think in looking at particularly environmental sustainability, we can use tools for sports for education. We can have programs that look at impacting different societies and dealing them and educating them about the impact of environmental sustainability. So I think sustainability at the end of the day is just that, the word to sustain. Can we continue to sustain the way that we are in the structures that we have? I think we probably could, but not in the ideal way. And for what I have been asking and what I've been talking and debating with other members is we need to open the possibility that what we have right now is not what they call necessarily fit to form. It's not necessarily the best way of doing things. And what I would like to see is an openness to look at what are the other possibilities, what are the other alternatives. Can we look beyond the traditional? In the job that I have as president of our national policy, chair of the National Policy Council, the most frustrating thing that I come across is when people say, but that's the way we've always done it. Because, yeah, it might be good, but it shouldn't be an excuse just to continue doing something that might have worked 30 years ago, but is it really working as well right now? And I think I'd like to open that debate with the membership to look at, can't there be better ways that we can do things? You take an example, if you look at the formula for international federations and the distribution from the games was decided in 2009, is applied from 2012, and it's the same formula they've had ever since. Well, sports actually has come a long way in those 12 plus years. Is it still the right formula, or should we be looking to review that formula and maybe finding a better way to do it? Same thing for Olympic solidarity. It was a model that was built over about 30 years ago, And I think it is a good model, but is there ways that we can make it better? And all of that helps us become more sustainable and helps us to have greater impact in the world. I hope that answers your question.
Good. Very good. So now we go to Donna.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Prince Faisal. You have been involved in a very experimental program called Generations for Peace, where you use a conflict resolution in sport to bring divided communities together, especially in your refugee camps. How could that experience inform your vision for the future in expanding the solidarity programs within the IOC movement? And if you do win the presidency, will you bring outsiders in to have a dialogue so it isn't just all the conversation remains within the closed membership? Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. And Generation for Peace has proved to me what the power of sports can have at the grassroots level of changing communities. We've worked in over 52 countries. We're actually now in the United States. We've been working for a few years, but we've had it in Asia, Europe, Africa, and has been, I think, a good and successful model. It is something that has demonstrated to me the importance of grassroots work. And when looking at Olympism 365, we actually do work with the Olympic Refuge Foundation and the IOC about the programs that we have in various different countries. It has shown to me what sports can do and what the impact it can have if used in a proper way. Would I like to see more of that? Yes. The challenge that we have right now is looking at how do we distribute the pies that we have. And a lot of other priorities we're also introducing in the IOC safeguarding. We've got other things that are coming on. They're now introducing esports. And again, that's another burden NOCs have to take. The money that we have needs to be able to support, sustain, and help NOCs and IFs develop their capacity. And capacity building is not something that's cheap. So the challenge is, for me, is not redistributing the pie, it's making the pie bigger. If I have more pie, there's more to go around, allows me to do more and to have a greater impact around the world. Like I said, I've seen the impact that sports for peace and development can have, and particularly about the healing that sports can provide, especially post-conflict. So I would support more of that, but we need to then have a discussion as to how do we balance all the various different requirements that we have as an IOC with a very limited budget. If I can make the budget bigger, that gives me more flexibility. In these issues and other issues, I think it's useful to bring in people from outside to help us, experts in the field, to be able to help that discussion. It all depends at the end of the day when we're looking at what decisions need to be made. In the past, all the decisions were basically taken at the level of the session, the IOC membership. We have not seen that, if you want to say, democracy effectively implemented for a number of years. And I think that's what I would like to see brought back in. I'd like to see people being engaging in debate. I want to see what all the opinions are. And it's only through consensus that we can end up finding a way to move forward. And I think that is what I'm proposing in terms of the style of leadership. So involve people, get the different opinions. We can be more effective, I think, when we've had a chance to debate than if we don't have a chance to debate. Right now, there's not much debate in the Olympic movement, and that to me is sad. I would far prefer to have a healthier debate, either within the session or with experts. Both of those are critical, because it's only through that that we learn from each other. It's only through that that we become a better organization. There is no monopoly on good ideas. And I think we need to use the collective potential. We have a very, very good, capable, smart membership that is being underutilized at this point in time. So part of what I'm asking for manifesto, particularly on the issue of inclusion, is to get everybody involved and to utilize them in a proper way. I hope that answers your question.
Well, I think that more than. Elias, it's your time.
Thank you, and greetings from Nairobi, Royal Highness. Two quick questions. One, the Olympics is about universality, and well over 100 years after the Olympic Games was first held, we haven't hosted it in Africa. If you're elected president, what would you wish to do to make sure that Africa at least hosts the Olympics? Because 2032 is in Brisbane, and 2036 Copenhagen is among the cities bidding, although Cairo and South Africa also have an interest. What is your plan for Africa? And secondly, quickly, the fight between World Boxing and the IBA, International Boxing Association, how would you like, I know the IOC has recognized World Boxing, but there's still a big constituency in IBA. How would you like to handle this if you are elected president? And all the best. Thank you.
Okay. The first question on universality, Elias, I think there's nothing I'd like more than to have greater universality. And I had said that in a previous statement. Right now, the way the games are structured in the time frame that they are structured makes it very difficult for a large part of the world to be able to host. So you're talking in Africa. I think it's the aspirational hopes of people who want to have a chance to be able to host. But look, the way it is right now, that's becoming less and less likely. I have included in the manifesto to discuss with the IFs, is there flexibility in the program so I can open the dates, and by opening the dates, allow for more countries to potentially host. And that's part of the universality. Right now, you have traditional cities, even in Europe. If you're looking at Madrid, Rome, Athens, with the climate change, they're not going to be in a position to be able to host. So I think we need to have that flexibility. We need to explore the flexibility in being able to expand that, because you named the number of countries. For instance, in Asia, you've also got India, you've got Indonesia that is interested. We've heard Mexico is interested. So there are a lot of countries that want to do it for the right reasons. But by limiting the time frame that they have, we're making it almost impossible for them to be able to effectively host summer games. And I think that is why I've suggested that we need to sit with international federations and see how much flexibility there is in being able to adjust the dates and thereby allow more countries to potentially host. And I think this is part of national pride. People want to feel that they are that they have a chance, that they can enjoy what all the Olympic movement can give them. So I think in terms of hosting, you're going to see the youth games in Senegal next year. And I think that's a good start. And I'm hoping the success of that will generate further successes in the future. But take a look at the dates that they're doing it in. It's not in the traditional summer months. So if there is no flexibility, less and less countries are going to be in a position to bid. And I don't think that's good for the Olympic movement. So I would like to explore that. And like I said, I would love to see countries from Africa, from Asia, from Central America, Latin America. Let the world have an opportunity. And I think that's something I would support in doing. But it requires a discussion, but we have time. We're talking about 2036. We've got time to be able to do that. On the issue of boxing, the challenge I think the IOC had with IBA was on the issue of governance. It's a long, drawn-out story. As a member of the executive board, I've been involved in the discussions. And I think at the end of the day, they have a lot of money, but they don't have a good governance model. And that was one of the things that we had asked as an IOC that they put it in. Now, World Boxing seems to have the good governance model in play. They are in the process. We provisionally recognize them. I think they're in process. They still have more hoops to jump through. But as I said in the first press conference in Lausanne, boxing was one of the first sports in the Olympic movement. I would hate to see it dropped out of because we can't find somebody who has the governance structure, who has the integrity to be able to run competition fairly. So I think this is where the challenge lies. The IOC had been responsible for both in Tokyo and for Paris for running it. But you saw the controversy that was made by IBA on 2 women athletes in Paris, and how that led to a lot of criticism. So I think we need a professional organization that has a governance structure in place that can be responsible to make sure they can deliver boxing. And I'd love to see in LA 28, whether they'll be ready and whether they'll be capable. That's the challenge that World Boxing has. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sure. Zarina from Kazakhstan.
Good evening, everyone. It's already evening in Kazakhstan. Sorry, but I can't turn on the video. My Zoom right organized doesn't allow it. And my questions: how do you plan to maintain a balance between preserving the traditions of the Olympic Games and introducing modern trends such as new sports or digitalization?
Thank you, Zarina. There is a process right now for allowing any host city that brings in the games that are traditional games that they're expected to be able to support and provide for, and that's a traditional mechanism. There's also an opportunity for a hosting country to nominate up to 5 new sports that they think is very attractive, that would generate a lot of interest. They're allowed to then select those sports to be included as part of the program. So in the past, we've had surfing, we've had speed climbing, we've had skateboarding. We've had a number of new games that particular, I think, look to appeal to the youth that have been included in these games that have generated a lot of interest. And I think this is one of the key principles that we have. And I think it's a great opportunity for people to showcase sports that could generate more interest. The challenge is that if sports are on there for a period of time, they are likely, it becomes more and more difficult to drop them. We're trying to limit the numbers to 28 plus up to 5 additional. We have to balance that also with the numbers of athletes that are competing and the officials, because otherwise it can very easily start growing, and that puts an additional burden on hosting the games. Right now, the cap is around 10,500. And I think it's useful to have that cap in place. So I think we have to balance the traditional versus the new. But for instance, I'm sure, I don't know how popular paddle tennis is in your part of the world. It's quite popular here, and it's quite popular around the globe. But that will be introducing a new discipline. It could still be under tennis, but there are limits. Does that mean I have to take something else out for it to go in? And I think that requires a bigger discussion in trying to look at the balance. But we've seen the success on 3x3 basketball as an example. It's very exciting, it's very fast, it's very quick, and it's a great showcase of talent and capabilities. So I think, although we don't want to lose necessarily all the traditional games, I think we have to look at how do we balance it. And there is a mechanism for IFs to become part of the 28 core sports. And so I think we have that still in place. But the flexibility exists with new sports to be allowed to come in. But just because they've come in 1 year doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be there from here in the future. I think that has to be what the host cities have to look at.
Mhm.
Thank you. Wojciech.
Good afternoon again, Your Royal Highness. I would like to ask about the sports washing matter, as the sports washing, which is using the sport from the countries that do not really comply with the human rights that much, and hosting either the Olympic Games, but also like other major sport events. And this is do you think this is the challenge? And if so, how would you manage this challenge as the potential IOC president?
I don't know if you're aware, but in all the future host contracts, there is a human rights clauses in there that the hosting nation is expected to implement and to support. So there is an element of that is being dealt with in hosting the games, and the question of sustainability and protection of human rights. That is something that the IOC can do, particularly during the games. I think the fact that that exists as part of the host city contract will encourage countries who may not have the best record in the world, that if they want to have the chance to host, that they start transitioning their laws or rules and regulations that allow for greater respect and greater integration of human rights into their country. And I think that is not a bad thing to have. I think that is a good, if that's an incentive for people to do the right thing, then I think that's a positive element. But we've always got to balance the issue. I don't believe in terms of, as you said, sports washing is to try and clean up these images. I'm not sure how in the long term that's going to be necessarily effective. So I think we need to look at that balance in place. But human rights is a critical part of all future host city documents. And so if countries end up adopting those rules and regulations in their country for the possibility of being able to host it, I don't see that as being a bad thing. I think that was something I would encourage.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sergio.
Good morning, Prince. Good morning, Mr. Mulu, and everyone else. My question today would be, what role do you think the IOC can play towards creating more consistent performances for developing countries in the Olympics? The last time my country would have won a medal was 8 years ago. So it's kind of obvious that developed countries have an advantage with regards to manpower, information systems, and the technology as well. So what can the IOC do to even the playing field?
Thank you for that question, Sergio. I come from a small NOC, so I'm very much sympathetic to the challenges that you face. And like when we're talking about some of the other questions in terms of how can we balance or try and level the playing field, whether it's issues of AI or other potential opportunities. The challenge is right now is even Olympic solidarity, which is the traditional model that NOCs use to help support and fund athletes and to help them in their development. That, in terms of real money, in real value, has not been changing very much. In fact, we're actually getting less. We have a 10% increase over the next quadrennial, which is 4 years, which is about 2% per year. I don't know what inflation is in your country, but I'm sure it is a lot higher than 2%. So in terms of real value, it is unfortunately shrinking. That's why, as I had spoken with Donna, what I would want to do or to focus on is how to make the pie bigger. We lose 3 top sponsors in a year, and that to me sent alarm bells. When I asked about it, they say, oh, well, you know, it's after Tokyo, they're not, you know, the Japanese aren't interested. Well, one of them went to FIFA, the other one went to World Aquatics. So they still believe in the power of sports. But they obviously, I feel, they didn't feel that they were getting what they needed from the IOC. So to me, one of the critical issues is how can I make that pie bigger? And it's only by making the pie bigger that there's more to go around, and that can support NOCs. I mean, you're facing a challenge right now. We're requiring safeguarding, and I'm one of the people who makes safeguarding a requirement in international sports, whether it's through NOCs, and we're providing support for people to be able to go through safeguarding and certification. But that's an additional burden NOCs have. We also now have come out, we've got the Youth Olympic Games. That's requiring, again, taking resources because NOCs have to train and develop youth participants. And we're also now introducing esports games, which a lot of NOCs have no idea how to deal with. How to set up those federations, because it's not traditional sports. So putting more and more demands on NOCs without giving the ability to build capacity and to support them in the field. I think I'm unique as a candidate in saying that one of the things I'm looking for as a president is to decentralize some of the functions of the International Olympic Committee. So not everything is based in Lausanne. I would look at co-locating NOC and marketing staff in the field with the continental associations, with international federations, because I'm sure you know I come from a military background, and the way you have an opportunity and impact is you've got to be as close to the field as possible. If you don't understand what's happening in the field, you're not going to get the right picture, and you're going to lose opportunities. And I think this is something that we're facing right now. I want the regional offices to be advocates for those continental associations, because they live with what the continents are facing. They understand the challenges that continents are facing, big and small. So they're in a better position to sit there and say, hey, look, this is what we need to do. We can help out. We can have big impact if we do 1, 2, and 3. Right now, my feeling is the IOC has a cookie cutter approach, one size fits all, and the world isn't like that. We know the world isn't like that. So we need to have better adaptation. The advantage also is that when we're looking with sponsors, if the top sponsors know they have a field office at the continental level, let's say top sponsors want to do want to promote something in a particular region, they could use those continental associations to say, okay, what do you have as NOC, National Federation, International Federation? What are your projects in this country? Because we're interested in doing something. Which means they're investing in the grassroots. They're investing in those communities because they want to make a difference. They're getting a benefit. Sports gets a benefit, whether it's the NOCs, NFs, or International Federation. So I think there's more that we can do to help smaller NOCs. But trust me, I know the challenges. I come from a very small but very ambitious NOC. We got our first Olympic medal in 2016. We've been able to get at least one medal in both. We got 2 in Tokyo. We had 1 in Paris. So I know we're working on the right track, but could we do with more help? Yeah, I think the challenge is there. How do I make it balanced? And partly is not when you've got the disbalance. It's not about bringing the top down. It's how can I lift the bottom up so that it's more of an equal playing field. And that's what I would be looking at for mechanisms to really be able to help the Olympic movement.
Thank you. So let's go to Wakako, Japan.
Good evening from Tokyo, Prince Faisal.
How are you?
Hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Fine, thank you indeed. Well, Japanese sponsors should damn listen to you. But my question is somewhat related to what Donna asked before, Generation for Peace and about war and conflicts. In a sense, war and conflicts unfortunately stir emotions, hatred, even amongst athletes. And we saw it hard way how it is difficult for Ukrainian athletes to accept Russian individual participation. The IOC also initially faced a lot of criticisms from all sides by trying to push for universal participation. Is there a limit to an ideal or way of universality, ideal way of carrying on what sport is all about in the face of war? Because you have such an experience, and of course, you are no stranger to war, or your country is no stranger to war. What wisdom or belief your experience gives you?
I think the challenge is like I said, we can't solve the world's problems with sports alone, but we're part of the global community. I've also argued for a more compassionate Olympic movement. We've got to understand that there are people who have suffered, who are going to feel that hatred. But when we look at it as sports as a healing tool, as sports as unifying, bringing people together, this is what we should be looking at. At the end of the day in Paris, you had 206 nations represented, and you had actually one that's not considered nations. I'm proposing to consider them a nation, which is the Olympic refugee team. And it's all about what they can achieve. And so you have everybody living in the same Olympic village. And I think this is part of the Olympic message. It's difficult because there are probably right now, I think if somebody told me it was around 40 to 50 wars that are going on around the world. Unfortunately, if they're not, if they don't happen to be in a area where the international media is there, we're not hearing about it. And I think that there is a tragedy in that. The Olympic movement can help bring peace. It can help bring understanding. It's about respect. It's about friendship. It's about building a better world. These are all part of that Olympic values we all believe in. So I think there is a role it can play. Now, the issue that some people have asked me was about Russia, and I'll answer this this way. My understanding right now is Russia is in violation of the Olympic Charter. As such, any country, in my opinion, that violates the Olympic Charter faces the potential of sanctions. I believe that that's clear, and as if I'm elected as president, it's my responsibility to uphold the Olympic Charter. So I have to use that as the basis upon which all other decisions come from. Do I want to have Russian athletes or people from Russia? I don't like the idea of discriminating based on passport or where you're born, because if we start doing that and choosing who we allow and who we don't allow, then I think it's a very slippery slope. Because the world is not always in a peaceful, calm state. You're seeing a lot of turmoil that's happening these days all around the world. So I think we need to look at it. we can't stop wars, but in particular post-war, there's a lot the Olympic movement can do, and it's about unifying the world. I always love it. At the opening of an Olympic Games, everybody comes in behind their flag. In the closing ceremony, all the athletes come in together, because at the start, they represent their country. At the closing, they represent the world. And I think that's a very, very powerful message. And that's what we need to be able to use, and to be able to give that sense of hope and power for people to feel that they are part of that global community. I think that's where the strength of the Olympic movement and the Olympic Games are. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So now go to the next. Sorry, one moment that I've lost my image.
I see a lot of hands being raised.
Yeah.
Zhao.
Thank you, Gianni, offer me the opportunity. Good afternoon, Your Royal Highness. My question is, although Olympic sports include lots of sports, such as bicycle, athletes, swim, gymnastic, etc., but still there are many other sports have long sought Olympic inclusion, but face significant challenges, such as darts, snooker, nine ball, actually all the billiard games, martial arts, Tai Chi, etc. Yeah. I interviewed an English World Association president who has pursued this goal for over 20 years and still sees it as his lifelong dream. How do you view these challenges? If you become the president, how would you balance traditional and non-Olympic sports while ensuring diversity and inclusivity in the games? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayan, and it's a good question. Like I said, the challenge right now is we're limited in both the number of athletes that can potentially participate and the number of events that we have. So if we add something, we need to be in a position to take something out. And that always is a very difficult and challenging thing to do, because if you're in there, you don't want to be asked to cut back. You know, instead of having your 5 discipline, or 5 weight categories, we're now going to give you only 4. It's difficult. It's tough. Countries are looking for Olympic inclusion because the Olympics is the ideal. It's the pinnacle of sports. So to become a member of the Olympic movement is something that is very, very challenging. It's very difficult. There is a process in place, but it is not something that is easy to do and very, very straightforward. And it means if somebody goes in, somebody's got to come out. And that's where the challenge is. For instance, you might be aware in Asia, we do various different games. We have indoor games, we have martial arts games, in those games, we allow the opportunity, for instance, billiards, snooker, I believe even darts are part of it. The esports is part of the indoor games. It gives them an opportunity to be able to showcase what they can do for their athlete community. It's not an ideal solution, but to be honest, if I opened it up for every international federation in the world to be part of it, we're going to have maybe 30, 40,000 people showing up at the Olympics. And we're already concerned about sustainability in terms of controlling costs and making it affordable. That's going to make it even more difficult to do so. So there is a process in place. It is not easy, but for inclusion of the billiard sports, there's now a federation, and we're looking in Asia of the mind games, the more traditional chess, the checkers, all of these. It's providing them, I think, with an opportunity and a platform that they can actually demonstrate and gain popularity within the countries. We've done that, I think, rather successfully in Asia. I think it might be easier at that level until you get to a standard where everybody is so enamored with the game that that they then sit and say, well, why is it not an Olympic game? But right now, not the sports that you have been talking about, I don't think have the following globally for them to be recognized necessarily as an Olympic game. So I think we have to balance the reality. And we talk about inclusion. We'd like to include everybody, but the reality is, I've got to limit the size. I've got to limit the numbers, and even then, I've even limited the time period. So it's only 16 days. So I've got to do everything in that 16 days. So it provides with a challenge. And that's why we've gone to non-traditional games or part of the Asian Games, whether it's indoor or whatever, to allow federations the opportunity to demonstrate and to gain more following within the continent. I don't know if that's been done in other continents, but that's the formula in Asia that we came up with. And it's a compromise, but like everything in this world, we have to look at compromises.
Prince Faisal, now we are at 1 hour. How is your condition? Because I know that you are talking a lot, and in Ramadan it's not so easy. You're a record holder in this moment.
No, I'm quite happy to carry on for.
Okay, no, I ask you because I know that it is a big challenge.
Unless they're bored of listening to me, then that's a different.
No, everybody listening is not so difficult. Raul.
Okay, thank you, Gianni. Good morning. What does he propose as different from batch management?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
No, we have not understood, Raúl, can you repeat?
Ok, si no en español y se la traducen, tal vez es más preciso.
Okay.
¿Qué propone usted en su plan de gobierno que lo diferencie de Tomás Bach y su gestión actual?
Okay, I think you're asking me what would I do different than what Thomas Bach is doing?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. The manifesto is quite clear. I think we need to have, it's based on 3 pillars, imagination, integrity, and inclusion. And I think you will see in our manifesto that there are a number of things that I'm proposing specific to each of those 3 pillars. Those are pillars that I feel that are not being done, and that will have a major impact, I think, on the Olympic movement. Of the 3 I've been asked in the past, which one do I think is the most important? And I would have to probably say integrity is the most important thing in that. And the integrity of sports, the integrity of what we can do, and integrity in everything that we ask. We as an International Olympic Committee ask national Olympic committees and international federations to demonstrate good governance, and to demonstrate a sense of integrity. We need to be at the forefront of that by setting the right example. And I think there are concerns about that. People view the IOC as an international institution. It's a global institution. Right now, we also are seeing that the youth of the world are not or have lost trust in global institutions. The future of the Olympic movement lies with the youth. So I think we need to demonstrate our integrity to the youth, to rebuild that trust, and thereby rebuild the credibility with them and the relevance for youth around the world. And right now, I think that's very much under fire. We're also talking about safeguarding not just sports, not just looking at gender equality and making sure that the sports is in a safe environment. Who wants to send their kids to participate in a sport if they think that their kids are going to be harassed or abused? It's just not going to happen. And we're going to lose the opportunity to be able to have people a part of the Olympic movement if we're not honest enough to sit there and say, we have to make sure as much as possible that sports is safe for children all around the world. We also have to sit there and say, again, integrity. When we look at sustainability, whether we're looking at it from the financial perspective or more importantly from the environmental perspective. This is our only globe. If we don't get this right, we're hurting our children. We're hurting the future generations if we don't take sustainability in a real sense. So these are all things that I feel that are different from what is happening right now. Inclusion is a very important part. We are not taking advantage of the rich diversity that we have in the membership in the International Olympic Committee. I would like to see far more debate. I would like to see far greater participation. I think this is something that we need. It is healthy. We're not going to get necessarily, unanimous decisions being made, because out of 110 members, I sometimes find it incredible that we come up with unanimous decisions, that nobody has a different point of view. Statistically, it's almost impossible to do that, particularly if you've got very smart, independent thinking individuals. So we need to include people more than what is happening. I mean, I am excited about this elections coming up. It's the first time in 6 years the members will have a choice of how they want to see the future move. And that is not a yes or no. The last time we had Milano Cortina and Stockholm. But in 6 years, we haven't had an effective voting and involvement of the membership in deciding the future. There are 7 candidates. You've interviewed, I think, almost all of them. But this, I think, is exciting. They're going to have a chance to decide the future of the Olympic leadership. And that, I think, is a good and healthy position to be in. So I think everything I put in the manifesto in terms of what I would put as imperatives, those are all things I'd be looking at implementing. But I believe in consensus, which means we need to discuss all of this. We need to work together to decide the blueprint for the future. I have some ideas. It's not enough to sit and criticize, but the manifesto has allowed me to say, okay, if I'm president, how would I solve this? And I think it's important to be able to do that. So I'm not just criticizing, but I'm proposing potential solutions. But I want to work with the members in a more effective manner to understand what they want, and then what the majority feels is the right thing to do. That's what we should. That's the direction we should go. I don't know if that. I hope it's a very big question for me to answer, but I've tried my best.
No, you're doing your best. So now, Rick.
Okay, thank you so much. We got 2 weeks to go in this race. Can you reflect a little bit on the journey that you've had to get to this point and how it's going to be to the end?
It's not going to get any lighter in the last 2 weeks. I think that the pressure is on. There are 7 good candidates that are out there, and it's impressing with the members on who they feel and the direction they feel that the Olympic movement has to go. And that requires both reaching out and also listening to what the members are telling me. In terms of reflecting, somebody asked me, it's like, are you nervous? Are you stressed? And I said, no, actually, this has been a good experience for me. Because as I was explaining beforehand, the issue is not so much that I have concerns, but I had to be in a position where I could actually come up with potential solutions. So it focused me very much to get that through. And what I wanted in the manifesto is to make sure my passion, my feeling was reflected in that manifesto. So the best compliment I got in writing the manifesto, and it took a lot longer. I went through, I think, 16 versions before I finally agreed on the final one. But the best compliment I got is that this is you. And that's what I always try to do, to show me genuinely what I think, how I act, how I feel. So it's a reflection on me. And actually, one of the other candidates had said, he said, we finally saw the true Prince, what he stood for, what he's interested in. And so that's been great. Then I had the opportunity in Lausanne to present. A number of new IOC members haven't really had a chance to interact with me. And so it's an opportunity for them to both listen to me and to see the passion that I try to portray in why I'm in this race. And I've gotten very, very good feedback from that and a lot of encouragement. So it's been a fascinating journey. I think it's been excellent for me, regardless of what the outcome is going to be. I've contributed. And as I said at the beginning, one of when Johnny asked me why I did this, I wanted to make a difference. All of us, I think, in the IOC want to make a difference. And this is an opportunity. Regardless of the outcome, I've contributed. I haven't sat on the sideline and just critiqued everything. I tried my best. If I succeed, then I've got my work cut out for me. If I don't, at least I've done it. And I hope that whoever does become president will look at it and say, you know what, actually, Prince Faisal had some good ideas. Maybe I should really think about that. And that's the contribution to the dialogue, to the discussion. I think that is important. So I'm actually, as I said, I'm excited in the last 2 weeks coming. I have probably, in the last 4 months, spoken to more and spent more time talking with IOC members than I had in the previous 4 years, keeping in mind that we also had COVID and that had a big impact. And I think that for me is a win in and of itself, because I got to the time. People saying, oh, well, campaigning must be tough. Actually, for me, it was fascinating. I learned from people. I got to listen to different views, different concerns, and each one of them had something different to contribute to the discussion. And I think I'm a better person as a result of that. I'm still on the executive board. I will be for another 2 years. So regardless of the outcome, it isn't that, there's not a job to do. I'm responsible for taking the lead on safeguarding in the International Olympic Committee. I'm on a steering committee. Because I'm a candidate, I haven't been able to do anything because they didn't want us, they wanted to control us from taking what they believed was an unfair advantage. I get to go back to that because, I get to go back to gender equality. There's a lot of things I can then help. And for me, it's about becoming a better person. I mean, to be honest, my wife told me today, said, you're a far better person now than at the start of this race. And coming from my greatest champion and my worst critic, that to me has made it all worthwhile. I'm a better person as a result of that. And I've got a good chance. I really feel that the momentum is going. It's building up. A lot more people are coming up to me and talking to me. I'm believe, based on the numbers that we're hearing, I'll be in the last 4. I think I can get to the last 3. And depending on who I'm up against, there's a real chance, I think, for me to win. And I'm in it to win it. I'm not in it just for the sake of appearing. And I think I can contribute to making the IOC a better place.
Thank you.
Tracy. Tracy. The microphone?
So
Microphone. Tracy, we cannot hear you.
she's unmuted, but I can't hear her.
Yes. What happened?
I think
We
she has a
can-
problem
yes,
with the audio.
Do you have a problem with your computer? Hello?
Yeah,
We
can you
cannot
hear
hear
me?
you.
Can you?
Yes.
Now
Yes.
yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. I'm a long way from everybody. Your Royal Highness, I just wonder, with the as you're talking about making that the IOC needs to make, is the current IOC fit for purpose, given that it pretty much operates the same way it has done for 130 years or so, and yet the world has changed significantly in every respect? And even on top of that, the rise of the Middle East now, your region, particularly Saudi Arabia, the impact it's having in upending some sports. What kind of an impact do you think your region can have on the Olympic movement?
One thing I'll go back to quoting the President Bach, and he has put it up on the wall outside his office: change or be changed. If we don't change, if we don't adapt, then we're going to be forced to change. And that usually ends up being, let's say, evolution versus revolution. Revolutions tend to be quite painful to do. So can we evolve? And I think, well, we looked at Olympic Agenda 2020. I think that was an attempt to restart the significance of where we are and where we should go. I think we need to look even further than that. That's why I proposed having Olympic Agenda 2036, which is looking at where do we then, what are we going to do for the next 12 years? And whether, and this is where I want to involve all elements within the membership, and also people from outside the movement, part of the sport world. What can we do to better reflect the realities that we have on the ground? Because the world is changing. And I think I'm open to looking at whether the structures that we have are still relevant today as they were in the past, or whether we should look at change. One of the things that we were looking at on the issue, universality. When you say it's a very traditional system, we haven't had a leader that's been outside of Europe and the United States as an Olympic movement. Yet we are a global institution. And at the top level, I think this is an opportunity to better represent all the different communities that exist and have that sense of universality. I think one of the advantages that I have is I'm brought up in an Eastern culture, but I'm Western educated, so I can help bridge between East and West, and also bridge between North and South. And we need to look at how we can be better unified and work together. So I'm open to look at new things, to explore the possibilities, and I say unlock the potential. Are we using the potential in the right way, or can we do it in a better way? And I think that's where the challenge lies. And I think there was 2 parts of that question. So that was one. Was it
the Middle East,
okay,
the region, Saudi Arabia?
No.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia, we've seen, and I've got Mubarak from Qatar as well. So I can see him in the background with his hand raised. I think sports, and I think the challenge is that you've got a part of the world who has recognized that sports is a necessity, not a luxury. And I mean, that's a challenge. We saw, for instance, unfortunately, after 2012, a very successful games in London. Right now, there was a study that basically said that there are 7,000 less PE teachers in the UK than one had in 2012. France, Paris, an amazing set of games. Yet what did they do the next, a few months later? They cut the sport budget by 30%. So, we have a challenge to try and convince global leaders the relevance of sport, not just in terms of social integration, for all the health benefits, all the unity benefits that it happens, and to building a better and more productive society. That challenge exists, I think, across the globe. And the Middle East has finally realized that there is great potential in this. They want to invigorate their youth. And in the Middle East, I think, if I'm not mistaken, half of the population is under the age of 20. So they have a big youth population. What's wrong with them wanting to be able to be part of a global community and support global sports? And I think they should be allowed to have that opportunity. And I think the fact that they have now recognized the importance of global sports as a necessity, not as a luxury, allows them, and they have the resources to be able to commit to really making their communities different, to really introducing change in how their communities work, how their communities look around the world, and to be able to host international events. We saw the World Cup in Qatar. For all the criticisms that happened prior to it, it was a fantastic games. They demonstrated that they can host, and they have the whole world coming to them. So they're reaching the world. And everybody has told me how much they enjoyed the games. So there is great opportunity, there's great potential. We talk about universality. I was asked about, whether Africa should be allowed to host the games. I think all parts of the world should be given the opportunity to be able to do something great and to host international events, because it means so much and it can fundamentally change societies to the better. And I think that's where the potential is. And the fact that the Middle East has now recognized that and is moving towards that, I think is a good thing.
Okay. Now we have still two, and one that Belisa, you're asking for a third question. Now I will ask after, because there is also Diamel that is never able to raise his hand electronically, that he has sent in the chat the request to speak. So first Mubarak, after Diamel, and after Belisa, and after we finish, because I think that your marathon, Prince Faisal, is incredibly strong. Very good.
Thank you. Like I said, it's been fascinating talking to them. So I like that.
السلام عليكم
عليكم
صاحب السمو
السلام.
الملكي الأمير فيصل حسين رمضان كريم to you and إن شاء الله
كل عام وأنتم
الشعب
بخير.
الله يرحم والديك يسلمك إن شاء الله. I will ask my questions. First of all, I believe this is the first time that two candidates from Asia and of course from دول عربية احنا we are very happy. خير تمثيل إن شاء الله يا رب العالمين. And also I'm very happy that you cover the climate change. It's very critical, especially to many countries. And as you say, fairness is in all the globe is different in the different areas. And also you cover the AI utilization and also the potential solution when you mention about with the members as from the democratic point of view. My question, first of all, about the esports. As you know, there is a heavy grown into the younger generation, and I believe that when you mention about Thomas Bach saying change or to be changed, because you are looking for, yes, you are coming from people say, okay, we are from older mentality, but we are covering the younger generation. Our kids are living there. If you can elaborate more about the e-sport as a vast, and also, do we believe that we can have a medal as well? It could be the medal in different sport. I've seen a very good in Tokyo, for example, they introduce Tokyo 2022, or this is like a game. Maybe it could be a different games. Another question about the decentralization of the Olympic movement. If you can elaborate, because Asia, we are covered, I think 60% of the population, and most likely a different offices are there. So the floor is yours.
All right, Shukran Mubarak. I'll try and address them each. Esports, I think, is an exciting potential. When we look at building credibility with the youth, there is a lot of youth that's involved. My oldest son is the head of our esports federation and looking to help establish a new Asian esports federation if that goes through. So, you know, and he always used to say, and I think I had it in the manifesto, he said what we should do is we should collude, not collide. And I think that, for me, was a great way to sum it up. That's where a lot of youth are spending time on it there. Is it going to be able to encourage people to go out and do physical sports? I think it will for some. It's not going to do it for everybody. But I think if we can include in the esports at least the principles of the Olympic movement, the values of the Olympic movement can be put into the games and working with publishers, then hopefully we can be in a position where that those values are embedded in their everyday life. And I think whether it's through physical sports or whether through esports, we are, the IOC, the Olympic movement is a value-based organization. And we should protect those values and encourage those values in all the youth in the world. And so they're on these platforms. We need to be part of that. We need to be on their platforms if we want to be able to communicate with them. And I think that's what we're looking at in terms of the esports. I think it was ambitious when they said they were going to do it this year because we haven't figured out how we're going to, what is the process for people to qualify to be able to attend. And as I said, for a lot of NOCs, they don't know how to deal with this. This is new for them. So I think they're looking right now in 27, they'll be hosting the games. It gives them time to sort all of these things out. Whether there's a medal in esports, I think at this point in time, that's probably not going to be something that will be likely. Will it be in the future? I think if people feel that they've demonstrated that there is a strong reason to do that, I don't necessarily see that I wouldn't exclude it completely. But like I said, we need to get esports up and running. We need to look at it. One of the potentials that I'm looking at, again, look at decentralization, to partly answer, is that this is new platforms. Twitch is the #1 platform used by children that are following esports and the competitions that are going. Now, can I work with Twitch as a sponsor to have, they cover the esports series, and the money that's generated from them, I can then help support NOCs. So I put it back to let them develop their teams. Because right now we're asking more and more from NOCs, and we're giving them less and less to play with.
And I believe your Highness, I believe you mentioned about how to improve the contribution to the NOCs.
Yes. And decentralization is partly about this approach of one size fits all from Lausanne is not something I think that is working well. We've got to take into account both the cultural and historical differences at a continental level. I'm on the ANOC chair of their gender equity, and we focus on gender equity continent by continent because we recognize that each continent has its own challenges. So decentralization is to put people in the field so they become the advocates for what the continent needs. They understand what the continent needs. They're in a position to try and look for ways that they can contribute to. It's easier to do it when you're in the field than it is when you're removed from it and sitting in head office in Lausanne. So that's why I look at decentralization.
Okay, now let's go to DMR.
مساء الخير سمو الأمير رمضان مبارك.
الله يبارك فيك.
Your Highness, since 2013 and the election of Tokyo to organize the 2020 Games, the designation of organizing cities has changed and seems to lack transparency, or let's say lack visibility. Before, there was a real competition with several candidates, and not only one city announced since the beginning of the process. This also leads us to talk about opening application to all countries that wish to bid. Can we organize the winter? Can we organize the winter games, for example, in July or August in Chile or Argentina, and the summer games in November, December, as was the case for the World Cup in Qatar, with the great success it had, as you said?
I think climate change is a reality. It's not something that I think it is here. We need to be able to adapt to it. And that requires a relook at the calendar to see whether there is flexibility. At the end of the day, we're looking at multiple federations that have their own, out-of-year programs that we're asking them to make adjustments to their programs. The World Cup was easier because there's only one federation that decided to shift the dates. You're talking about 28 with the potential of up to 5 additional games. They need to look at where they can do it. But I'm all for universality. I'm all for giving everybody an opportunity to bid. I agree with you that there is a challenge when it comes to the visibility and the transparency of bidding cities. We now hear that in 36 there are more and more countries. South Africa, I've heard Korea, but I can't remember if it's 36 or 40 they're looking at it. Germany has announced it in Frankfurt. They're looking, I think, in 2040. There's Indonesia, there's India, there's Qatar, there's Saudi Arabia, there's Egypt, there's Mexico. And I think, like I said, I think I included South Africa. But we don't know as members where they are, what is happening. What I will say is that at the end of the day, we need to have a fair assessment of what the capabilities are for each city. But I would put the election back in the hands of the members, because I think that is a better and more effective way to do it. Right now, we're presenting only one option for either take it or leave it. And I don't think that is right. We're not given any other options around it. And I think when we look at credibility and transparency, we need to have that in spades if people are going to believe in the IOC. We can't ask it from other international federations from a governance model perspective as well, and yet not demonstrate that ourselves. So I think I would look at how we can review the process, but also to provide regular updates to the members who's left. I think the challenge is that when people want to initially come in and do the exploratory work, if they then are registered as being a candidate for more detailed discussion, then they feel that they have to, rush and get things done, and rather than looking at the best way to do it. So I think the IOC can help support them in looking at the viability of their bids, how they can look at reducing costs, how they can look at making things better. But also, this is something that for the host city commission, I think they should report regularly who they're talking to, what the level of the stages of discussions are, so that we're not caught by surprise, so that we're in a position. 2036 is 11 years away. The traditional one, we want to do it 7 years, so we still have time to try and get it right. But I believe in open competition. I believe in a fair, level playing field, and let the memberships decide. So that's the way I would approach it. And I hope, like I said, it's a question of integrity, it's a question of transparency. And the inclusion side is, it shouldn't be take it or leave it, which is what we have done. Like I said, since 2019 was the last time we were given a choice of 2 cities. 6 years.
Now, I want also to remark one thing, because everybody is speaking about the change of the weather and everything, but why the Olympic Games are always in the same period, usually in August, must be clarified. Is because NBC, the major sponsor, wants to have the live Olympics in that period, because after we begin the situation of the NFL and all the other professional tournament, and so there will be a clash of interest. So the problem of climate will collide with the problem of money, because if they spend billion, it's normal that they try to stay in the period of the year, because when we will go to Brisbane, in Brisbane will be winter in some way. Will be not summer, but winter. No, I asked to Tracy, it's not so warm, it's not so cold, but it's not also so warm. So we have to find out a solution. Now there is.
But hold on,
Lisa,
John.
Yes.
Okay, just on that comment, John, that the contract expires in 32.
Okay.
So there is a possibility, if the IOC was serious, they could try and negotiate and make that, if they want to stick with NBC, to try and look at having the flexibility. But because they're under contract and NBC is a major sponsor, the TV rights, they're in a position of power. There are legal issues about trying to change it now, but that doesn't prevent us from looking at 36.
Sure.
So, yeah.
No, but even the television will change their mind for the future, because many things are changing very quickly now. But only to explain why before was not possible, especially for this reason. Belisa, your question is short, or because the marathon now, Prince, I think that is exhausted after.
You're on mute.
Sorry.
No, she's on mute.
Yes. Belisa?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking my question, Highness. What will be your first step to take if you become a president of IOC? What is more urgent to change and to do? Thank you.
That's an interesting question. What I would like to do versus, and again, with the practicality, is to be able to have an open and frank dialogue with all the members. So whether it is possible to have a global retreat where I get all the members of the IOC to come in and to open a forum for discussion of what the challenges are and how to look at the way forward. I think the challenge has been in the past, we are not, and I think you've got that sense for members, is whether the IOC really cares about what they want or interested in their opinion. I've heard some people say that they are worried that if they express a negative opinion, that there are repercussions for that. That is not a healthy environment to be in. So I mean, one of the things I would look at in terms of the more global, obviously the transition has to happen, and I won't be president until 23rd of June. But what I would like to do is to have a retreat, bring everybody together, if it can work out, and spend 3-4 days just talking about all the issues, talking about all the things that have not really been discussed, and to try and get their feedback, and look at that as a starting point for building an Agenda 2036. So that's the way forward. It's discussion, it's integration, it's being able to network, it's to be able to explore ideas, it's to look for the potential. And I think that would be a critical thing. The logistics of doing that might be a bit of a challenge, because you know that the global sporting community has very, very busy schedules, whether it's at a continental level or international level. So I think we'd have to look at it. But that's what I'd like to do. I'd like to sit and listen to what the different opinions are, and to get guidance. I can't do it by myself. I don't pretend that I know everything. There are things that I need to listen to from the members. And all of us have different experiences. We come from different backgrounds. We come from different parts of the world. So we should be taking advantage of that in being able to develop the blueprint for the future. So in terms of a practical sense, that is something I'd like to do. I don't know if I would be allowed. I don't even know if I can even suggest that, because it's not part of my manifesto. But I think this is where the key is. We need to listen. We need to encourage people to speak, because that's the only way we're going to really have a chance to really build a proper blueprint for the future.
Okay, now we have Morad from Morocco has entered a little bit late, but he has asked to have the last question.
The poor guys in Qatar are probably worrying about iftar. He's got a couple of hours to go, so he's in a good position.
سمو الأمير أهلا وسهلا.
أهلا وسهلا.
جد سعيد بلقياكم.
شكرا.
So, maybe I'm gonna ask in English for everybody. My question is related to our profession and the future. We have noticed. Sorry.
Which profession?
Journalist.
Okay. I just want to make sure that I'm not talking about athletes or whatever. Okay, journalism.
We have noticed that some federation and even the confederation are rolling the red carpet for influencers at the expenses of professional journalists. What is your opinion on this situation?
To be honest, that's the first that I've heard of it, but I'll give you my initial idea. Journalism as a professional is a professional. It is a profession. It's not something that everybody can do. But right now you have the rise of, shall we say, the social media journalists, or what they call themselves as journalists or reporters, who don't have the same background, who don't have the same training and understanding. And quite often what happens is that their reports, there is not necessarily accountability to what they say, what they accuse. And so that they can confuse the situation rather than reporting the truth. And I think this is something we're concerned about. Now, I can see why people might want influencers because if they figure that they have a greater reach. Some influencers have millions of people following them. So it's being able to tap into markets that they don't necessarily traditionally have access to. So there is a financial aspect for that for IFs, and to look at it. Is that the best way? I can't really, I'm not sure. But it is easy for people to sit there and say, look, you know, even in Jordan, we've looked at trying to get some of the influencers to come see what the Olympic Preparation Center is like, to talk with the athletes, you know, even maybe to have an opportunity to compete in their sports, because it draws attention. It draws, you know, people. Oh, okay, they've got an actual audience. So I think there are ways of using influencers in a very, very positive way. But there's also a danger of not, are these influencers providing the truth to the more difficult and tricky questions? And I think that's where the professional journalist understands what's at stake and understands the impact. At the end of the day, an influencer just wants likes, wants hits, and that's what they care about, because that's how they make their money. So I think you need to look at how do you be able to balance it. But I can understand that there is a certain appeal because they're reaching audiences that traditional media is not getting to. And we talked about, I think, when we look at esports, again, it's going where the young people are, looking at platforms where they're existing, where they operate from, and trying to be able to influence, to reach out for them. And I think that is the intention. I don't think it's bad intentions. I think they think this is a way to get their message across to a population that they don't traditionally approach. So I think, like I said, I don't know enough about the impact of that to be able to give you a proper assessment. I can see what the appeal is, but there's also dangers of doing that if it's not controlled in a real way. So I'm sorry, I don't have a scientific explanation.
شكرا سمو الأمير. رمضان مبارك.
But I think that one thing that is for sure is that we have to defend our profession, because lately all the top organizations sometimes are trying to put us in a corner, and this is not correct, because even to your Congress, election Congress, what will be provided for the professional journalists to meet you if you will be elected is only a mixed zone. And this is not correct. Sorry, this is not, is against, in some way, against our profession, because especially after an important election as this, how we can accept that we can meet you only in a mixed zone where everybody is trying to have the approach with you, but will be a kind of mess, even if the place is quite big. It's not enough, and even if there is no possibility also to have a simultaneous translation, because there will be journalists of different countries, and this, on my point of view and the point of view of all the journalists that are present with me, is not correct. I think that in the future must be changed.
Look, from my understanding is that that this was something that the candidates were asked about. I believe the next day there is going to be a proper press conference, and I think that there will be the opportunity to do it in a more structured way. I think that just the feeling was that, or my understanding is that people are concerned about emotions will be high, and so it gives a chance for everybody to, let's say, take a few deep breaths, calm down, and then be in a position to answer. Because the last thing, I mean, if I win, the last thing I want is somebody shoving a mic in my mouth. It's like, let me just absorb that. Let me just have a chance to catch my breath, to think about it. So we'll have to see. But these are decisions that the IOC administration is taking in the interest of the members, and we will see what they finally decide. But
Okay,
I
no.
agree with you. The thing is like I said, the mixed zone will be, from my understanding, almost immediately after the election.
Yes.
Whereas, and everybody would be able to have a chance to talk. Whereas, I think it's just an opportunity for people just to be able to, like I said, what the outcome is, you need to take a deep breath, absorb what has happened, before coming out. For those that know that they're no longer in the running, it's a lot easier because they've had a chance to absorb it. But for those who don't know until the last minute, it's like the Oscars. You don't know who the winner is until the envelope is raised and people and it's announced. So. Anyway.
But there is a big difference between sport and the movies, because they are fiction. We are not fiction.
I know.
This is the problem.
I know. I was just saying that I think I was looking at more in terms of the drama that comes with it. But we will see. We'll see what decision is finally taken. But I'll keep that in mind.
First of all, I have to thank you very much, because today we have made the world record of a press conference. So I think that is something very special, especially during the Ramadan. I admire you, because without drinking and to speak for near 2 hours is really a human record. And I thank you very much for your kindness. And
Thank you.
see you soon. And after, or in the position of president, or in the position of that you have in the executive committee, or your Olympic committee, you are always welcome to our Congress that this year will be in Rabat, 13th to the 17th of May. Anyway, okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you all for taking the time and keeping the interest high in this discussion. And like I said, just 2 weeks to go, and I think all will be revealed. But it's exciting times. I'm very, very confident. I think things are moving well.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Ciao.
you.
Ciao.
Thank you.